All right, in this video, I want to share with you something that's powerful. I think it's going to help you feel a little bit safer. You may have had some friends and family ask you about this new real estate investing business that you're in. I know I did with my family, and you know, I even had family members not think that what I was doing was legal. And so it's because what we're doing is not the norm, but it's 100% legal. So I'm going to show you why it's 100% legal in just a moment. And that way you can feel good. And this will pass the scrutiny of any real estate attorney, realtor who knows what they're talking about. Most do not. And you will find that as you do this business. It's kind of a little known fact that most realtors and investors don't like each other. And that's because they don't understand each other. If they did, they would love each other. And the ones that do typically are realtors who are investors themselves. And so they get what's going on and they understand. But I used to be a realtor and a mortgage broker, and I never heard about, I had heard about, but I never understood real estate investing. And I just knew that we weren't supposed to get along too well and that these greedy investors were all about the bottom line and profits and all that kind of stuff. And so so we just weren't big fans of each other. And really, once you see why, you'll understand that it's really just a matter of a lack of communication, a lack of education in real estate investing, and specifically in creative financing, which is what we do. And once people, if they were just be a little bit more open-minded, they would see this is 100% legal. And I've dealt with attorneys throughout the United States, and those that are real estate attorneys understand it. If they're an attorney that does taxes or divorce or something else, they're not real estate attorneys. So how can they speak on real estate, right? You wouldn't go to a dentist who is a doctor to ask questions about brain surgery, right? You need to go to a real estate attorney because they're specialists in that. So if you're talking to anybody other than that, or if you're talking to somebody who's a realtor who's never heard of creative financing techniques, they're probably going to say some negative stuff because they don't understand law. And I've had to correct a few in my time of doing real estate investing when they would come on strong and be negative and say, hey, you're doing something illegal and you're brokering without a license and this and that. And then I had to explain to them what I'm about to explain to you. So that way I can empower you and empower them, and so they can understand what's really going on. All right, so the title here is this legal? The question is, do you need a license? The answer is no. And here's the reason why you don't need a license. Um, if you were to broker, meaning if you were to represent either a buyer or a seller, you would need a license because you are now representing the interests of somebody else. In what we do as lease option investors, we only represent ourselves. We don't represent the buyer or the seller. So even though we are speaking with a seller or a buyer, we use oftentimes my buyers. They're not our buyers in the sense of we don't represent them. There's no representation going on. So we're not looking out for their best interest or the best interest of the sellers. Not doesn't mean that we're trying to hurt them. It just means that we're looking out for our interests. For example, if you owned a home yourself and you wanted to sell that home for sale by owner, you being the owner, you would not need a license, right? Because you're selling your own house. So when you see all these for sale by owner, or FISBO as they're also known as, these are people that are selling their own property. Their name is on title or on the deed, right? So they don't need a license to sell their own property. Well, that's what's happening here. The sellers that we work with are giving us or transferring to us or assigning to us lease option rights. And that's what you see right here. Okay. So they're assigning lease option rights to us. Lease option rights are personal property. They are not real property. Real meaning real estate, not real like artificial. So lease option rights are personal property. They're actually documents. They're contracts. What we are buying and selling are actually the contracts. We are not transferring title or deeds for real property. We are merely assigning or selling or transferring lease option rights. So if that's a little confusing, again, let's say you own a home and your name is on the deed. If you were giving, if I was helping you to sell that deed to somebody else, and I said to you that I want to represent you and I'll represent your best interest, and I work for you, and I'm going to help you negotiate against a buyer and make sure that you get the best deal. Well, now I'm acting like a broker. Now I'm acting like what a realtor would, who needs a license to do that. But when you, the homeowner, give me the lease option rights here, and you say, Russ, now you own these rights. You can turn around and sell what you own, which is personal property. Kind of like a couch is a personal piece of property, pieces of furniture or a car. That's personal property, right? So I'm turning around and I'm selling, assigning, or transferring what I own, what the homeowner, you, have given me, the lease option rights, over to another buyer. So I'm saying to you, I want to buy these rights, but I'm going to put in the contract that my intention is to turn around immediately and sell, assign, or transfer those rights to somebody else. Okay, so I'm not representing anybody. I'm simply becoming a for sale by owner for the lease option rights. I'm now the owner of those option rights. I'm going to sell them or transfer them to somebody else who will now own them. And that person's going to give me a fee, an assignment fee for that. They're interested in what I've got. So I'm not dealing with the deed of the home. I'm dealing with something different. These are personal. This is personal property. So that's what your realtor who is unfamiliar, and even attorneys are unfamiliar with, and that's why, because it looks a lot like the fact that we might be brokering a deal. It looks like it, but it's not. And I'm always really, really careful not to say, yeah, we represent these buyers, and they're our clients, and we're looking out for their best interest, things like that. I don't say that because that's not true. It doesn't mean that I'm not looking out. It doesn't mean that I don't want something fair and equitable and honest with them, because I absolutely do. The reputation of my business is very, very important, but I do not represent them. There is no representation going on. So I know I've been saying that over and over, but I hope that's clear, because that's where a lot of confusion comes in. We do not represent anybody but ourselves, and we act as principals in the transaction, meaning um, we're only representing just ourselves, and that's it. All right, so let's move on. Here's another issue we get a lot of times too. People will ask when we're selling the property to the buyer, and the buyer will say, "Hey, is this a scam?" You know, how do I know? I mean, because these folks are hearing about all kinds of rent-to-own scams online. There's lots of them. For example, people who sell memberships, $100, $200 to get access to their list. We don't sell any access to get to our homes. It's 100% free to get access to them. Obviously, we sell the option rights, but we're not selling any memberships or anything to get access to go just to look at our houses. It's ridiculous. And that's what a lot of rent to own scams do. So the answer is absolutely no, it is not a scam. And here's the reasons why. And here's what you can kind of empower the folks that ask you these questions with this information. First, we encourage people to use a real estate attorney. So most scam artists don't encourage people to use a real estate attorney, right? They're not going to say, yeah, call the police on me, kind of thing, Most people that are crooks don't do that. They try to find ways to avoid that. We actually encourage people to do it. Now, most people won't, just because unfortunately real estate attorneys are super expensive, 250 to 500 bucks per hour if they're good. But we do make it available. Our contracts even say uh, and make sure that they initial everybody who deals in our contracts, that they are actually saying, yes, we have asked them to speak to a real estate attorney. We also encourage people to do their due diligence, meaning inspecting the property and title, etc. So we're not telling people, no, you can't see the inside of the house. That's another scam that you'll see like on Craigslist, where people will steal from other countries. They'll steal pictures in a property description of a home, and then try to get you to come by and look at the outside of the house, but not the inside. That's because they don't own the house and they can't get you inside the house. And then they just want to collect a deposit from you and disappear. So we don't do that. We encourage all of our buyers to come and look at the inside of the home and speak to the homeowner. right? And they can even inspect the property with a property inspector or themselves. They can inspect the title to make sure that the person inside the house shown in the house is actually the owner, because there's other scams about that too. So we have no problem with that. We are 100% open book. We also encourage them to check and make sure that the homeowners are current and not in foreclosure. So another scam is, let's say you own a home and I come um, to rent it or buy it, actually rent to buy, and you give me the keys. And what I don't know about is that you're late 3 months already, and in another month they're going to foreclose on you. So I give you this big down payment, you give me the keys, and we're high fiving each other. Everything's great, but I don't know that you've been lying and that you actually have not made your payments. And so you're about to go into foreclosure, and I've given you this big down payment. You disappear to Hawaii on your vacation, and a month later, the sheriff comes knocking at the door and says, "You are behind. You need to give me your house." And so now I'm out on the street. And I've actually had several people that I've dealt with that had that happen to them in the past. And so we encourage people to get what's called bank authorization. Let me write that down here. Bank authorization. And that allows them to inspect that the mortgage is paid on time. How cool is that? So we encourage the buyers to go and actually inspect to make sure that the property is current and on time and is not behind at all. We don't deal with distressed properties. You're going to hear a lot of investors that deal with distressed properties where the homeowner's in big trouble, and um, the investor is looking, kind of like salivating at the mouth, going, "Okay, I'm going to take advantage." I'm not saying that's bad in all the situations. There are ways that you can do things that'll help the homeowner solve a problem. In fact, it actually happened to me. I actually sold my house. It was a $200,000 property in Colorado for $1,000. I was in big trouble as I was losing my business in real estate, and an investor came to me and said, "I'll give you $1,000. You're going to lose the house anyway, so take something." And I gave him title, and he took over the property. And who knows what he did with it from there? I'm sure made some money from it. But wow, what a good deal for him, and for me, it stopped me from foreclosing. So bank authorization is what we recommend folks do, and they can also ensure that the rent money goes towards the property rent each month. So um, let's say you're buying my house and you want to make sure that uh, when you're sending me the rent check, that the money's actually going towards the house. I mean, how do you know that I'm not taking that rent and spending it somewhere else while the house is foreclosing? How do you know that, right? You don't know that. So what we do with this bank authorization, it doesn't give away personal details of the homeowner, or anything that is not, anything that the homeowner doesn't want the buyer to see that would be private or personal, like birth dates and social securities or anything like that. But it does allow them to see that the home is on time, and the rent is actually being, going towards the rent. And ideally, the buyer, you would want to make sure that you negotiate that you can see that you can control the monthly rent, and make the rent deposits yourself directly to the bank each month. That way you're 100% sure that the money actually goes towards the rent. And then finally, we encourage and we inform each buyer to have all of their contracts that I draft for them to be recorded with the county assessor's office. So why is that important? Well, there is going to be a um, option agreement. There's going to be a purchase agreement, and there's going to be a lease agreement. And then, of course, we have an option assignment agreement, which is where we're assigning. It's a document that assigns all of these contracts over to them. So remember, the lease option rights that we possess, that I possess, when the folks that you send to me sign up, the buyer, the seller that you work with, that you send to me, is extending me the rights that I can now turn around and sell. So I own those rights, and I'm gonna assign those rights to somebody else. So this is confusing. Don't worry. You can watch this video again, or you can always ask me. But basically, the homeowner is giving me all of these rights. They're saying, "Russ, you and only you have the option to buy the house. Here's the purchase agreement that's going to describe the purchase." and you and only you can lease the property for 1, 2, 3 years or however long. And I go, awesome. Well, I just found another buyer, so I'm going to assign these contracts over to that end buyer, right? So once that end buyer buys all of these contracts from me, these lease option rights from me, um, I encourage them to go and have all of these contracts recorded at the county assessor's office so that they put what's called a cloud in the title. Here's a fancy $10 word or phrase for you. A cloud in the title means that they are the only ones in the world. They're declaring to the world that they're the only ones that are allowed to lease a property, and they're the only ones allowed to purchase the property. They're the ones with the option rights. So they're the only ones who have the option to purchase. Make sense? And they're the only ones who have the option to lease. Well, they are going to be leasing, but the option to purchase is the one that's in question. Whether they're going to buy or not. So that's what we want them to record, and that way the seller of this home can't turn around and go, great, I just sold that, I made $5,000. Let me go turn around and sell these same contracts to somebody else, right? That would stink, right? So when they record this, that puts a cloud in the title. It blocks the homeowner from turning around and trying to resell them again to make more money, while the buyer's in there thinking it's just for them. So yeah, I mean, so hopefully this has empowered you. This is huge for someone who's going to be buying a property. They'd want to know this stuff, and most people never learn about this because most rent-to-own companies don't share this with them because a lot of them are scams. And so, unfortunately, we get lumped into those. But the answer again is absolutely, unequivocally, no. We are not a scam, and that's why. All right. Hope this video empowers you, and hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions, just go down to the bottom of this page, fill out questions if you get stuck on anything, and let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.